Singapore is struggling with a major problem. Its native population cannot sustain itself naturally. The country's fertility rate has been amongst the lowest in Asia. For the past few years, it has hovered at about 1.2 births per woman. The rate necessary for a sustainable population is 2.1. In this video, I want to talk about the rise and fall of a demographic number, the government's struggle to control it, and the far-reaching repercussions of it not being able to do so. I took a course in economic demography in college. It was one of the most interesting courses I ever took. In there, you learn about the general progression of economies over multiple stages. I will attempt to summarize 13 weeks of classes in 2 minutes. In the beginning, you have a society with high birth and death rates. Women had many children, but those children died early on due to disease, famine, the like. Population growth is generally stable. Most people are younger. Older people are rare. Then, a developing country starts to develop. Crop yields go up due to better agricultural technologies. You get better public health measures such as clean water, sewage, and hygiene, very critical. Birth rates remain high, but the death rate dramatically falls. This results in a baby boom, a boom of population. This third stage is nice because it results in a lot of highly productive young and middle-aged workers entering society. They generate lots of taxes and the like. The economy grows from their productivity, assuming that they can all find jobs. The third stage comes as the economy continues to develop. Family planning and education means that women's birth rates begin to fall. Population growth is no longer booming. Instead, it stabilizes. This happens as women become better educated and see better opportunities in the economy than family life. Last is the stage we are at now. Low birth and death rates. The population is stagnant or in decline. Soon, the majority of the population are older than middle-aged, maybe even senior-aged. This describes much of Europe and developed Asia. In this stage, the young struggle to pay for the costs of taking care of the elders. Countries in this stage tend to replenish their supply of working-age humans mostly through immigration rather than natural population growth. Singapore is a tiny country with a dense population. For the first couple of decades of its existence, the country grew from immigration. Lots of Chinese immigrants coming over from the Guangdong province. It took many years, but soon enough women came over from China in order for natural population growth via births to overtake population growth via immigration. After World War II, Singapore experienced the baby boom, much like the rest of the world and per the stages that I talked about earlier. The peak fertility rate happened in 1957 and was over 6 children per woman. But over time, this fertility rate has seen nothing but decline. At first, this was intentional and something to be celebrated. 1970 saw the implementation of Singapore's Stop at 2 policy. Stop at 2 was the culmination of a series of policies implemented for checking population growth. It encouraged individuals to marry late and delay having a second or third child. A variety of incentives and disincentives were created to discourage families from having over 2 children. This includes 1. No maternity leave for women on their 4th child or higher. 2. An additional fee attached to hospitals for a 3rd child or higher. 3. Removal of income tax breaks for the 4th child or higher. And 4. Lower priority in education choices for 4th children or higher. Stop at 2 was more of a publicity campaign more than anything. The policies at that time had already been implemented. But the resulting message and its posters have had a lasting legacy in Singapore society. And one could perhaps say that it, like China's one-child policy, was a bit too successful. In 1984, Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew said at the 1983 National Day rally, "We must amend our policies and try to reshape our demographic configuration so that our better educated women will have more children to be adequately represented in the next generation." This was the first hint of changes to the population control policies of the 1970s. These government policies at first did not flip directly 180 degrees. Instead, they began by focusing on incentivizing childbirth upon women who were educated and could afford larger families. This took shape in the form of policies like the Graduate Mother Scheme. This gave priority in primary school registration to mothers with university degrees or proved professional qualifications. Restrictions on lower income families having their third or fourth children remained or were even strengthened. But fertility rates remained on the downtrend, and the government needed to make a bigger change. March 1st, 1987, the quote-unquote have 3 or more if you can afford it policy was announced. I personally think it's a bit more of a mouthful than the Stop at 2 campaign, but it relaxed old policies and created new ones to help encourage childbearing. This new policy would give tax rebates and tax relief to families who have their third child. It also granted up to 4 years unpaid leave or made part-time work options available for mothers in the civil service to look after their children. In terms of housing and subsidies, the government provided childcare subsidies of up to 150 SG dollars per child monthly. It also made it easier for families with 3 children to sell their state-owned flats. For a few years it worked. In 1987, TFR was 1.6, and it rose to nearly 2.0 in 1988. Papa Cork, good times were here again. But by 2000, it became clear that many more couples were either childless or had just 1 kid. August 2000, Prime Minister expressed his concern about how the low childbirth rates would affect Singapore's population. If TFR remained at 1.48, which was optimistic as it would go even lower in further years, then the population of Singapore would shrink from 3.2 million in 2000 to 2.7 million by 2050. Singapore had heard from couples that it cost too much and was too stressful to have a child, so they tried to implement policies to remove that burden. April 2001, they created the Baby Bonus Scheme. It had 2 tiers. 500 SG dollars a year for 6 years for your second child, another 1,000 SG dollars a year for your third child. But wait, there's more. If you set up a child development account, which is kind of like a 401k for children, then the government will match whatever you contribute, dollar for dollar, up to 1,000/2,000 SG dollars for your second/third child. In total, a family can receive a maximum of 9,000 SG dollars for their second child and a maximum additional 18,000 SG dollars for their third child. And this is over the span of 6 years. This is pretty real money. But then again, these policies have largely fallen short of their goals. And there is really only so much that you as a government can afford to do. The fact of the matter is, Singaporean natives remain unable to create enough Singaporeans on their own. For countries with aging populations, there's going to be a situation coming up in the future where the government can't afford to pay for all the social welfare policies promised to elders down the line. Every time you read about a pension crisis in some country in Europe or the States, that's the result of the inverted age population in action. To help solve this, you need more productive younger workers. To get them, you either birth them or import them. If you can't birth them, then you must import them. Singapore's immigration policies are rather liberal. The government believes in a philosophy of global talents, highly skilled people with technical expertise. Such people supposedly can live wherever they want and contribute to their chosen homeland with their amazing skills. Singapore's policies are very welcoming to such skilled talents. Their economic strategy has been geared towards making it easier for those types of people to achieve permanent residency and eventually citizenship. The problem with immigration, though, is that it almost always creates tension with the native-born. Singapore's immigration policies have been controversial in the domestic sphere. Despite widespread acknowledgement, on the whole, that having these foreign talents helps contribute to Singapore's overall development, it is hard to avoid resentment. And there are no official statistics on this type of data about how prevalent foreign talents are, but recruiter data finds that much of the professional and managerial elite in Singapore's various powerful industries tend to be foreign-born. A recruiting firm, Robert Walter Singapore, estimates that foreigners and permanent residents occupy 30% of mid-level finance jobs and 60 to 70% of senior-level finance jobs. So what does the government do? As always, it hangs between two different challenges. Imported foreign talent helps Singapore's economy deal with the aging issues, helps it perform better on a global basis, but too much causes resentment and spurs the Singapore for Singaporeans nativist talk. In conclusion, I do want to be clear. This is a problem that is happening for every developed country around the world. South Korea's birth rate, for example, in 2017 was a stunning 1.1 births per woman. Macau, Hong Kong, and Taiwan have rates similar to that, and Singapore too, and every so often they trade places for bottom place. This effect is happening for developing countries as well. Sub-Saharan Africa has seen birth rates fall from 6.8 births per woman in 1974 to 4.9 in 2015. Very high, but a 30% cut. And this is a problem that almost every country in Asia has tried to address in some form or fashion. Singapore has just taken much more aggressive and interventionist type steps to do so than many other such countries, but the problem resists simple solutions. Certain parts of the population are more fertile than the rest, and it tends to be correlated with higher religiosity or lower income. But in general, the richer, more educated people, i.e. the ones the governments want having more kids, aren't having more kids. And despite complaints that countries aren't doing things or aren't doing things enough to address it, they are. It's just not working.